Hi, I'm Kate.
And I'm Mandy, and this is Love Sober,
the podcast for the sober and sober curious.
Hi there, welcome back to Love Sober, the podcast for the sober and sober curious. And today I am joined by Jo Walduck. Jo is a sober coach from the UK living in France, which is how we connected through our experiences of being Brits in France, so I'm sure we'll get into that conversation in a moment. She came out as trans early on in her sober journey, and that's been a real kind of conversation that we were just having before we started this podcast, but also in terms of her own recovery and where she's at and moving forward, really. And so I'm delighted to talk with Jo today. And we were just saying that actually we've been kind of Insta friends for quite a long time, but I know nothing about her sober journey, so it's actually really exciting just to sort of listen and piece together the bits of how she ended up in France and how she ended up sober and sort of her work as a sober coach, really. So hi Jo, how are you doing?
Hi, I'm fine, thank you. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you once again for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. Yeah, and we were just sort of saying before that you've been suffering with long COVID, right? So things have been a bit up and down for you in the last year.
Things have been very up and down, in the last year. In the last 18 months, the last year with long COVID, the last 18, 19 months of sobriety,
Yeah, it's quite it's becoming one of those kind of, well, it's an invisible disease in a sense, as much as, you know, any kind of mental health problem that, you know, people don't really understand what it's like to kind of, to have that. So I hope, hopefully with the next vaccine will help a little bit to give you some protection from that. So we always start with a little bit about your journey to going alcohol free, really. So can you sort of take us back to your drinking self and how you made the transition to going sober?
So my drinking self was like at the same time kind of life of the party, and also let's bring the party back home. Like if the party hasn't gone on for long enough outside, then let's bring it back and continue at home. And I think at college, like I went to a sixth form college, so at 16 started partying on the weekends, and then went to uni and partying every day. And then when I moved to Paris, I was young, and it was a fun thing to do, right? It was one of my favorite things about Paris, the cafe culture, the terrace culture, the fact that I was definitely the binge drinker, but it was kind of fine because I'd go and be respectful in one cafe and then move on to the next cafe, and like as long as you do a bar crawl like every time, it feels fine. And then I don't know. I think as the years went on, like I was an English teacher for a long time, English and like communication studies teacher, and then when I moved to Lyon, so I've been in Lyon for 6 years. I was working loads, like I was teaching face-to-face 40 hours a week, and would then come home and be very much peopled out, and think, well, I don't want to talk to anybody, but I don't want to be deprived of a glass of wine or 2 or 12, and so was drinking at home more, and then was drinking out as well, and then one of my best friends went sober, and kind of surprised us all, because she was a proper pisshead like me. That was a fellow northern girl living in France, and she went sober, and she'd come to a party at mine, and was still loads of fun, which really I knew that she could be. I knew that she had it in her, but I'd never really seen it. And so that was the first kind of aha moment. I was like, oh, apparently we can still party and still talk to people without booze. And then when I was doing my certification, because I retrained as a life and business coach in 2018 and 19. And when I was writing like the paper to get certified, I decided to have 3 weeks off booze while I was doing it, and I had a couple of slips, a couple of evenings where I did drink, but it was the first time I think ever that I'd like gone for an extended period of time without booze. And then finally, when I was setting up my new company, I'd had the very clever marketing people at 1 Year No Beer had obviously seen my Google searches. Like, is it normal for this to hurt? Is it normal for this hangover to be the case? And so I'd been getting ads for them. And yeah, I was like, all right, okay, I'm going to give myself 4 weeks off the booze to really get this business off the ground. And that was the 20th of October, and I haven't looked at 2019, and I haven't looked back since. Yeah.
Wow. I mean, I totally resonate. I think we talk about this a lot in our group, you know, that teaching is such a tiring profession.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because I mean, that's another thing that we connected on, right? Sort of working in business schools and working in France as an English teacher. And the same for me. And it's like your nervous system is kind of so ragged by the end of the day because you've been performing essentially.
Yes.
You know, and when I was teaching, I mean, I was a great teacher. Like the students loved me. I loved my job up until the point where then I absolutely hated it. But you know, because it was social, like I was, you know, down with the kids and, you know, sort of like really enjoyed that interaction with them. But then I'd get home and I was just broken, tired. And then I had to put the kids to bed and was, you know, couldn't function, like couldn't, you know, be trying to read them a story, literally kind of like falling asleep. And it's interesting that kind of Brits abroad, yeah, it's quite a strange thing, isn't it, to live in another country and you kind of have these friendships that sometimes you go, would we have been friends if we weren't, you know, living abroad? Did you find that as well?
I did, yeah. I mean, every time I've moved, like I moved quite a lot, even when I was living in Paris. And every time I moved or changed schools, I'd kind of like go through a shed type thing, and would definitely lose contact with certain people. I definitely moved away from the Anglophone world in Paris, and like only ever went out with French boys, and kind of would always steal a couple of their friends before breaking up with them.
Good tactic.
I know. It was a really good way of surrounding myself with French speakers.
Yeah, I did the same. I did when we moved from Lille to here. I was like, I can't be involved in the sort of. I don't even like the expat. It's not on. It doesn't mean in the immigrant population of British people. Exactly. Because it can be quite toxic and strange, and just I think there's a falseness of those friendships which is just based on the fact that you both speak English, and it's a curious thing. And how are you finding, I mean, how is that kind of reflecting the fact that you know live away from where you grew up? How do you think that impacted on your drinking or on your sober experience?
On my drinking, I think it was probably, you know, as soon as I left home, like at 18 to go to uni, I was like, that's it. I'm never going back there. And not because of anything horrific, just so I was like, this is a choice that I am moving away, and I'm very much moving away and staying away. But like at uni, you know, everybody was away from home, so we were all, you know, it was kind of like, shit, what's that? Lord of the Flies, Lord of the Flies with booze, type thing. And yeah, there is definitely an element of I think we can still tap into that holiday type feel. You know, more or less wherever we live and whatever our job is. Like I can remember being dog tired one time going home from work in Paris, and the metro got stuck somewhere, and you know I had to come out, and I literally like came up on the Invalides and you know saw the Eiffel Tower and blah 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 blah, and I was like, yeah, right, this isn't too bad.
Yeah.
Like there are worse commutes to have, there are worse places to be dog tired, and so I think being able to tap into that holiday spirit, even when you have got responsibilities, that definitely enabled. You know, we can always find excuses to get paid.
Yeah.
But that was definitely a good one. Like kind of embarrassed.
Yeah, I think certainly for me, I've recognized now there's a part of my story that is about like displacement and about like, you know, I was the same, you know, I used to I grew up in a small town in the West Country, and I was just like, all I wanted to do was get away. Like all I wanted to do was leave. I like wrote angst poems as a 14-year-old of like climbing over the hills of the Cotswolds to like escape, and just, you know, because there was that sense of like I didn't fit. Like I had great friends, and I had a you know really sort of strong group of friends, but I just knew that there was something else, that there was something bigger out there. And then when I left, and then I just kept on trying to search for it. Like I was like, okay, it's not there, it's in Brighton. Okay, it's not there, it's in London. Okay, it's not there, it's in France, you know. And now I've got to a point where it's like, okay, the pandemic has made me stay here and reflect and go, home. What does that look like? Like
maybe it's in me.
Yes. Yes. Oh, I love that. Yeah, I'm gonna journal about that. Maybe home is in me. And it's been an interesting one, and I certainly know that part of my kind of sensory seeking behavior was about running away because I didn't quite know where I fit.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and also like that fitting, particularly in France, I feel the society is so good at putting you in boxes, making you fit into a box. And I was always, I can remember talking about this a lot when I was going through the coach training. Like I was like, I'm too, you know, at the time I hadn't come out even to myself necessarily as trans. I was like, I'm too gay to be hippie, I'm too British to be French, but I'm also too French to be British. And like that kind of thing of being à la limite of the two things, and having your ass on the two chairs, as we say. And that, a lot of my drinking was to either make myself forget the bits that didn't fit in the boxes, or to just not care that actually I didn't fit in the box. But it was definitely, and still is, an uncomfortable feeling that I think is more prevalent in France than the UK, at least in my memories.
Yeah, I mean, I always sort of say, and it's really interesting having kids, you know, that are kind of bicultural, and their reactions when they go back to England. Like there's part of them that feels there's like a sense of like, you know, pressure's off a little bit, and they can just be themselves, and they're much more kind of, I see them sort of shift into being more expressive and more open, and you know, even how they react to friends, like they've got a real bond with I guess it's because I'm their mum too, but they have a real bond with British people of like hugging them and just being, you know, close to them, which they don't have in France. But at the same time, I like that there's some rules and kind of, you know, a cadre in France that they don't have in the UK. So it's complex. It's really interesting and very rich to have that experience of living abroad, but it can feel quite lonely, right?
Yeah,
for sure.
for sure.
And so you know, if you don't mind, I mean, we talked about it beforehand, you know, talking about the kind of coming out as being trans and that being part of your sober story. So how has that impacted you, and why do you think being sober gave you that strength to own that part of you, I guess? Do you think there's a link there?
Oh God, 100%. Yeah, there's definitely a link. For years, probably twice a year for about 20 years, I would get pissed, and at 3 o'clock in the morning would be talking about, you know, trans rights or LGBTQIA stuff. And I've said it to her since. I'd say at that point, pissed at 3 o'clock in the morning, I'd say, I'll deal with that question as to whether I'm trans or trans enough. I'll deal with that when my mum's dead. Because I didn't want to, add that to her list of disappointments or hardships that she would carry for herself and also for me. And, you know, therapy tells me things about that. But yeah, the whole trans thing was, I think I was just over 2 months sober. And I had my first Christmas in Lyon, stayed on my own, and on the Christmas Eve, on the 24th, I went to to this dinner for femmes démunies, like women in precarious positions. And I was the guest of the woman who was running it, presenting as male, and one of the women who was there was like, is your name old name, dead name, or is it feminized version of dead name? And I was like, no, it's boy version. And she was like, okay. And she kept on coming back to it, and I was like, shut up, God.
Leave me alone.
Leave me alone. And it was already, I'd quit smoking as well, so I stopped the booze on the 20th of October. And then on the 1st of December was like, right, okay, I'm going to stop smoking and vaping as well. Like, fuck it, let's do it all. Let's do all the things that we want to do. And so I was already like really uncomfortable, right? I was at this big dinner where there wasn't much alcohol, but there was some. And where, you know, obviously people were going off, clapping left, right, and centre. And so that, I was like, oh shit, okay, all right, this is the thing like that I don't necessarily want to think about too much. And the next day I was doing some kind of like permanence type thing on one Yanobia, because I was home on the 25th of December, and I was like, right, okay, if I can be useful to anybody else, will be. So this guy, and I'm going to use a slur word in a minute, this guy was messaging me and he was pissed, and he was like, what are you anyway? Are you a tranny? Which obviously is a word that we don't use. And I was like, you know, hackles raised. I was like, we don't use that word. I'm prepared to like, you know, block him and move on. And he said, okay, what word do we use? And I was like, oh, transgender. And he said, all right, are you transgender? And I was like, fuck, yes. Like, shit. Yes. And the link between being trans and sobriety was that I couldn't run away from it in sobriety, right? I couldn't just muddle it. I couldn't pretend anymore and stay sober. And I'd seen within those 2 and a bit months, I'd seen how much that actually being sober brings. And so I didn't just want to go back to, you know, drowning my sorrows and ignoring the question and muddying the waters. For potentially another 10, 15, 20 years. Like, it was like, okay, all right, I can see now. I know what the answer is. Okay, let's go. Let's do it.
Yeah. And it's that kind of, I mean, it's that, I think all of it is that it starts with that. It's such a brave choice to be sober, because it does. I mean, someone said this in our group today. It was like, I think I had it all wrong, because I think I was thinking that sober was like getting back to somewhere else, you know, that I used to be, but without alcohol. And it's like, it's really not. It's like starting again. And it's like, you know, the opening of who I really am. And it's
Yes.
terrifying.
Of course it is. Yeah. It's terrifying, and then you can't go away and hide from it.
Yes. And
Yes.
and it is that kind of, you know, because my journey, like obviously I stopped for a year and then I went back to drinking, like back and forth. And it's like, you know, I think someone said on Soberistas a long time, it's like you can't unlearn what sobriety feels like. And it's like no matter how much, and I guess it's the same thing, right? It's like once you've had that acceptance about yourself within yourself, it's like, well, I can't ignore it now. Like however much I try to pretend, it's there and it's me. And I felt like that about, you know, my sobriety. It was just like every time I'd go back to drinking and I'd say to my husband, like, but wasn't I happier when I didn't drink at all? And he'd be like, yes, Mandy. And I go, okay, la 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 la. Cheers then. But I'm just going to ignore that because I want to be normal.
Yes.
I want to fit in the box. Please let me fit in the box.
That isn't built for you.
No.
Yeah.
So you mentioned 1 year no beer. So was that a resource that you used at the beginning?
Yeah, it was. It was. I mean, I think I read 2 of the emails, which, like, I'm a huge fan of Andy Ramage. He's very, very energetic. Far too energetic for me. But I just love his energy and light.
Yeah, he's wicked. Yeah.
And the 1 year no beer community. It was a Facebook group. That was the most useful for me. And I mean, you know, when I said I'm going to take these, like, I only signed up for the 28-day challenge, fully expecting to not stay the course for the 28 days. And it was so that I'd have extra time and energy and motivation to set up the business. And I just worked at sobriety and at being sober and at talking to other people as well. Like getting and giving, you know, suggestions and tidbits and support, like a huge amount of support, getting and giving from this community. And that was where, you know, the whole, it's a cliche, but it's a cliche because it's true, the opposite of addiction being connection. Like I was like, oh, there's this whole world out here, and it's not like, I'd done a really good job of surrounding myself with pissheads in my life. Pissheads and smokers. And then I was like, actually, I think I'm not going to be a pisshead or a smoker. Shit, where are my friends? Like, you know, who can I hang out with where it's safe and where I'm not just going to be tempted? And so it was on 1 year no beer.
Yeah, nice. I mean, that's been the same thing for me, because I think it's like you have this idea of like, well, I'm sober and then that's it, you know, it's like life's over kind of thing. And it's like, no, you have to create another life. And, you know, and it was such a kind of revelation when I found kind of other people on sober communities and just found that actually they were like really fun people. It's like, no, we weren't the boring ones, we were the most fun ones at the party. Absolutely. That's why we ended up in this mess. Like, you know, it's not because we were kind of sort of, well, probably internally wallflowers, but externally pretty loud and full of the party. So what's been your biggest area of personal growth that you've seen?
Hang on, I wrote an answer to that. Definitely redefining self-care. And, you know, it was very much a series of steps, like the training as a coach, with the therapy, and then the training as a coach, and then the sobriety, and then the coming out as trans, and then getting long COVID and having to deal with, you know, chronic fatigue and pain. And all of that. And so, redefining self-care. And
what does self-care look like for you then?
So it's a lot more listening to, it's being able to hear that voice, right? The voice, not just of what you want, but of what you need. And so it's doing the exercise, it's doing the breathing exercises to give me some stamina back. And it's doing the yoga, even though like I never did yoga before, and I'm terrible at it. I tend to do like 5 minutes of it and then just lie down on the floor and cry. But my yoga teacher was like, "You're doing yoga perfectly. You're
Yes.
you're letting it out, and something is moving in you and through you." And that's,
Oh, I'm glad you found a yoga teacher like that, because I'm struggling in France. Like every yoga class I've been to, it's super like energetic exercise based, and I'm like, no, can we just not do yoga nidra and lie down and give me a blanket and let me have a cry? Because that's what yoga looks like to me. So
does it have to be in the flesh for you, or can you do it online?
I could do it online. I mean, it's an area of growth, let's say, movement at the moment. I am actually going to the kine. I'm going to the physio today, because I've had I had a calf. I used to run basically, and I think when you have it sort of something that's your part of your, it definitely wasn't when I was a young person. I didn't do any exercise, and the only kind of movement I did was going, dancing in raves. But then kind of in my 20s, like after I'd had the kids, I got into running and actually like joined a running club, and I really loved it. And again, it's that sense of community. And I did a couple of half marathons, and then I got injured because I was drinking and not looking after myself. I got injured in my calf muscle. Didn't go to physio at the time because obviously I was too busy working, blah, 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 kids, no self-care. And the scar tissue, there's a scar on the tissue, so whenever I run it rubs slightly. So the only thing you can do is kind of manage it with massage. And anyway, so I either need to kind of find something else to do or really work on it. So it's a transition thing, but I mean, I love yoga when it's with people. I think that's what I'm coming to. I was talking to my friend Rose, who you know as well, who's another British person in France, and she was saying group classes, where you are with other people, that's like that's where she enjoys exercise. And I was like, I think I might be the same, because it can replicate that kind of like being in a club. I should do Zumba or something like that,
that sounds horrifying to me. Like, good for you, have fun. I'm gonna stay at home. I'll stay at home with my camera turned off and my screen turned on. Thank you. Like so much of the stuff that's come out of the pandemic has been really good for me, and also has been kind of enabling at the same time. Like I had anxiety anyway. Definitely had my own relationship with anxiety, and kind of agoraphobia, and like adding the whole trans, like being publicly trans and transitioning in public at the age of 36. Definitely contributes to the agoraphobia. And so, I work from home, I work online most of the time. And so now I've got my wonderful yoga teacher online on my computer, and I have the people that I want to speak to are just in my office. It's amazing. But it's a bit too, possibly, definitely a bit too much.
I completely relate. I can go like 3-4 days without going outside. And it's that fine line, isn't it? And we talk about this kind of in coaching and in our group, of that kind of when to push and when to accept. Like where's the comfort zone, and when is it the comfort zone is enabling you to stay stuck, and when is it actually where you should be right now. And it's a really difficult question to be like, do I need to just kind of feel the fear and do it anyway, or am I actually practicing really good self-care now, and what I need is just to rest? So it's not easy to, I think it's it within your gut, really. I mean, it's all nice in theory, going to a class, but whether I'll actually do it or not.
I mean, this yoga teacher is she's actually an old actress. I mean, a young actress. She was an actress when she was younger. She played the the older sister in Mrs. Doubtfire, Lisa Jacob.
Oh, okay.
And it's called Yoga for Anxiety. Like the thing, and it's kind of, it's pay as you want, pay as you can, pay as you feel fit. And I just love it. It's another thing that I never, 2 years ago, like, you're going to be doing yoga online. Like, fuck off. But thank fuck. So this is the thing, like, because I think the question was about self-care. And in the past, what does self-care look like to you? It looks like a bottle of wine in the bath with a straw after a long day. And, ciggies and taking time with friends and everything else. And obviously, what do you do with your friends? You go out. It doesn't matter if you meet them for coffee, you have one coffee. And then it's like, shall we have a little glass of wine? All of my self-care revolved around alcohol and or hangovers. It's still alcohol adjacent. And so now, therapy, yoga, the movement stuff, eating what does me good, as well as what I want to eat.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm going to check that out, the yoga for anxiety. There is actually within the She Recovers community, they have trauma-informed yoga on a Wednesday night, I think it is, which I tune in when Taryn does it, because she always reads really nice poems at the beginning, and that's very much just kind of lying down and just doing some gentle stretching and things.
Yes, lovely.
So tell us about your work. So I know we're recording this just before the summer, and you were going to take a kind of self-care break.
Yes.
Over the summer.
It's been intense, an intense while. So my work, so as I said before, I retrained as a profession, like as a business coach and life coach, and then went sober. And so I'm have added sober coach to it. So I work with women and queer people of all genders and sexualities, either pre-sobriety or during sobriety or kind of post-sobriety things, like goals and stuff. I didn't, when I trained, I didn't expect to be working, obviously, didn't expect to be working on sober issues, but it's worked out. It's worked out really well. Like, I think a lot of the people that I work with are kind of medium-term sobriety, and so it's that working on the shit that drove us to drink in the first place. In addition to, how do you also stay away from the booze when it comes a calling. And so I do one-on-one work, and I've got a wonderful support group that I run, and that will continue over the summer, and one-on-one stuff will continue over the summer. I think it's more the writing and like the media, the social media, like, you've always got to be producing content. I mean, I can see, that I can feel the yawn and the tiredness.
I have a complicated relationship with social media, for sure, because it helped me so much to get sober. Like Instagram was my jam. It was just the first time I got sober was through Soberistas, and then because I'd gone back and forth, not that there was anything from the community, like, but I felt I was just like, I cannot go back and be like, hi, me again. That thing I said about moderating, I was wrong, like, again, I'd done it like 7 times or something. So I was a bit lost. I was, and then it was like, oh, maybe, because I'd been toying around with Instagram, because there was a few people that I knew who were sort of mums and were doing brands work and stuff, and I was like, oh, maybe Instagram I could do something. So I had like so many different accounts. I had like one about food, I had one about motherhood, or one and I was just like, no, like, when you're just searching for your thing, and just like, again, where to fit. Maybe is it like, British person living in France, I
Yeah.
don't know, all that stuff. And then I was like, actually, maybe I just need to like talk about my mental health and my alcohol free journey. And I made some really good mates in America through She Recovers, and that was what really helped me sort of grasp onto it again, really. And This Naked Mind as well, reading that was just like, oh, that's all the stuff I'd forgotten, you know. It was that click again. Because I think after you've done a period of sobriety, if you start drinking again, it's like smoking. I mean, it was exactly the same. And actually that was quite good for me to be able to map them over each other, because I was a smoker and I'd given up and then I started again. You know, and it was that whole like, oh, only smoke on the weekends, or only smoke at parties. And then it was like, oh, now I'm smoking at work. And then it was like, you know, and I had that rock bottom smoking moment where I left the kids, you know, and they were still quite young, to go and get some cigarettes. And so again, when I was going through that with my sobriety, it was like, you know, right, I'll only drink, you know, every so often, and then and it's not like it was before because I'm not drinking on my own, and all those sort of different rules basically. But still the same thing. It was like, the question was like, is it making you happy? Like, is it taking away more than it's giving?
What does it bring? What does it take away? Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful for the people, like, I think so many people carry shame when they do that, like sobriety, moderation, shit drinking, back to sobriety, like, and go through that cycle and talk about it. But I'm so grateful for it, because otherwise I 100% would have gone back to drinking, like numerous times over the last however many months it's been. If it wasn't for stories like that, and for seeing the you know, the people who go towards moderation then coming back. And I'm not saying that moderation doesn't work for everybody. I'm sure I think there is probably confirmation bias in there. You know, the people that moderation does work for don't tend to come back to the sober community and talk about it, or at least not the stuff that I've seen. But I think for a lot of people, like for those of us who have troubled relationships with alcohol, or problematic relationships, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's about, I think, kind of analysing why you're putting alcohol on a pedestal. Like, why is it so important that to try and keep it in your life? You know, and that was the difference for me. It's like, you know, when I started looking around at other people, you know, my husband drinks, my family, I definitely know there's people within my life that have problematic relationships with alcohol. There's people that are not, you know, looking at that, and that's okay, that's their journey. And there's people that, you know, drink less than they used to. But it's like, I know, you know, for example, with my husband, it's like, if you said to him, right, you know, there's no more alcohol, sorry, he'd be like, oh, I mean, he's French, right? He has a wine cellar, like he's super into wine. He'd be like, oh, dommage. Okay, gosh. Anyway, you know,
where did you find him?
He'd be like, okay, anyway, like, let's go and play tennis. You know, like, he has other things in his life that are, you know, he's really good at tennis. He's, you know, he's quite career driven. He's got other stuff in his life. And again, with other people, it would be like, oh, all right, you know, like, my dad's a cancer survivor, so it's like, when he was having treatment, it's like, don't drink, so he didn't drink. But for me, I would have been like,
can you give me the chemo where I can drink?
How can I just drink? Like, I know, you know, it's that thing of like, oh, we're moving house tomorrow, okay, I'll get really shit-faced because I'm celebrating the fact that we're moving house, and now everything's gonna be terribly difficult. And, you know, and I write those sort of things where it's like, oh, thank goodness I'm, you know, I'm sober, because I, you know, I enjoyed taking the kids to school in the morning. And some people were reading that going, okay. But for me, that's where it was, right? It was just, it was at the center of everything. Even if, yes, I could keep it in check and blah blah blah, and I wasn't, you know, at a rock bottom, it was still the center of all my thought processes.
I think that's it is that aspect of just saying no to that one thing, right? Am I going to drink today? No, I'm not. You say no to that one thing and it stops all of the 89 billion other questions that come afterwards. I was talking to another sober coach friend yesterday about I've just completely lost my train of thought. So yeah, hope you can edit that part out. Can't remember. Sorry.
That's okay. We were talking about moderation and taking one thing out and how that allows you to have other brain space for other things. And I think, like, certainly for me, when I was like moderating or whatever, what I was actually doing was trying not to get drunk all the time. And all I really wanted to do was get drunk. Of course. So it's like,
constant frustration.
One was too little and two was too many. Just that was the reality of it. So what are your plans, projects? What things have you got coming up in the future?
So I'm hoping to have a bit of a redo, possibly without, pandemic and chronic illness. There are hopes to carry on growing the community, growing my one-on-one work. I wrote a guide to beginning an alcohol-free adventure, which is available on my Patreon. That's been another complication of transitioning over the last year, has been bank accounts and working online via PayPal, and some people are like, okay, we'll use this name, and then other people are like, no, you have to use a different name. It's been quite hard to make business things happen easily online. Kind of working through that and getting more, doing more writing and carrying on doing the podcast things, and then I'm just waiting for our mate Glennon to call me next. And then I'm going to go and live with her and Abby, and it'll all be fine.
Oh my goodness, I'm so obsessed with Abby. She was she will be one of the guest speakers at She Recovers conference. So it was Abby.
Wow.
So it was cancelled last year, so they do a big conference. I went to the one in LA. Everyone will be laughing when I say that, because I basically drop that into every conversation I ever have with anyone. When I was in LA, but they did this huge conference with really amazing speakers like Cheryl Strayed and who else was, oh my goodness, I can't remember, like Tara Moore. Really amazing speakers, and so the one that was supposed to be in Miami last year, Abby was one of the guest headline speakers.
Cool.
So hopefully if it should be next year.
And you will be there sitting next to her.
Yes. Going, oh my God, I love you. Well, we could let's keep working on that dream. Me and Kate often talk about the kind of the dinner we're going to have with Oprah and Glennon Doyle.
Love it. See that? Let's just invite them all over to France. We'll be how many other sober coaches are you going to find in France?
Exactly.
Right. It has to be us.
Yeah, we were talking about with Rose, actually. We are that's on the plan, to do retreats and try and conferences and stuff. So yes, you'll have to be a guest speaker.
Yes, please.
Okay, so coming to the end, we always end with a tip of the day and your reason to love being sober.
So the tip of the day is still go to the gentle. Make it nice. To get sober and to go sober, it's finding the positives. And I think so many people are when they start this kind of, particularly in the challenge, I'm gonna see it as a challenge, and I'm not going to have any sugar, and I'm not going to have any nicotine, and I'm not going to, eat any real food or whatever. And then it's like within 3 days they're miserable, and within 4 days they're pissed again.
Yeah.
And so go to the gentle, like find ways to celebrate every single achievement. If it's like, on the hour, every hour, do that. Like, because those first few hours and days are massively, massively important. You can't get to 100 days without the first 100 hours.
Oh, I love that.
Hurrah! Yeah.
Go to the gentle. Oh, I love it. Yeah. And what's your reason to love being sober?
I can't remember. No, it's the clarity. It's seeing me. It's seeing the world. It's knowing that I can trust myself, and that I can feel the feelings that I feel, and with no judgment to them or anything else, but also knowing that they're not being influenced by alcohol or by a processing of the poison. It's just, if you feel like shit, okay, well, what's going on? Like, what's going on behind that? It's clarity and realness, the authenticity, the truth to what's felt.
Oh, yeah, thank you for sharing that, because it's just that hits the nail on the head for me too. It's that authenticity of self. And I love what you wrote on your post today. What was it? That self-care is care of self.
Yes. Yeah, and taking care of ourselves, like the us.
Oh, thanks so much, Jo. It's been fantastic to
pleasure.
finally. I feel like we just had a chat, really.
Me too.
Which is what all good podcasts should be. So it's been fantastic just to learn more about your story and what you're doing. And thanks for sharing openly, so other people can find you and find the community and seek out the things that work for them. So. I really appreciate that. And hopefully I'll see you soon in real life.
How exciting. On the seaside. Yes.
Yeah. If we ever get to sort of, I don't know, get out of this crazy world we're living in. Maybe we'll see each other in England before we'll see. Heaven forbid.
No, I think I'm just going to stay in Wales. I'm going to completely bypass England. Stay in Wales at least.
Wales is beautiful. It's one of my favourite places. So okay, well, if you're listening and you're immediately concerned about your drinking, do reach out to Jo, reach out to us, info@lovesober. I've put all the details of Jo's work underneath. And Soberist has an anonymous Ask the Doctor service. Alcohol Change has great sort of resources for local support. Whatever you need, sort of don't be afraid or don't feel embarrassed or feel shame. It's like it's a human experience and we're all just trying to get well. So look after yourself, and we'll see you next week for more chat.